So this is a presentation of that I'm attempting to capture the key points on that we did for the Moms of Liberty Prince William County chapter recently. And this is primarily for the members of that outfit and basically anyone that they want to share it with. It was put on by John Hahn, Paul Huber, and myself, Jeff Fuller. And this is contact information for me if you have any questions about the presentation. Now this is basically to make the point that this effort that we briefed recently is basically built on the work that we did back in the summer and fall of 2022. This is the team that did that work. Tim Weaver is still available, as is Mark Dillon and Paul Sabala as advisors if we want to reach out to them. But what's different is that the Prince William County school system has made a number of changes, and I believe that the police department has emphasized post-Uvalde a number of things based on what the chief of police has briefed the school board on. But the changes that they're proposing have been significant, and we will highlight some of those. So, but you can see, if you go back to these resources that I show here, exactly what we did, how we did it, and what we communicated to officials and citizens at that time. So what is this presentation? Basically what it is it's an aim to provide Moms for Liberty and the public an introduction to school shooters and school shootings. We want to focus on the prevention side of the equation, but we will cover the response side to some degree. And we provide our recommendations to Moms for Liberty for advocacy, and we will answer your questions. What it's not is an attack on Prince William County schools, school board, school division, or the Prince William County Police Department. Both have been making significant progress and have plans to continue that progress, and we applaud that. I think everybody attention was drawn to the problem with the horror of Uvalde and the breakdown completely of all anything that looked like a reasonable response or prevention program. But it's also not a collaborative assessment. Normally, such an assessment as this would be done with the school division and the police department, contributing and answering many of the questions. We didn't have the benefit of that because they would not cooperate with our work or respond to our questions. So at the end of this briefing, we ask you to be able to answer these questions. This is a preview. If the Uvalde, Texas shooting happened here, would we have been able to prevent the massacre? Would the school division and the police department be able to stop the attack quickly with minimum casualties once it was underway? Are we able to dissect our policies and capabilities and answer questions about this? Are elected leaders, officials, and citizens happy with the current plans and the risk presented? And what should our advocacy position be? This is the background summary of our team. I'm not going to belabor that. You can see what we're talking about. Interestingly, all three of these team members have experience with risk analysis and risk management from somewhat different angles, but it made us able to work through the whole concept of risk management very effectively. This is the agenda we'll follow, and this is the order of the briefing. So this is Paul Huber's points, and I'll just highlight a few. One is that clearly that there's an increase of problems with handguns being seized in schools, shootings on Freedom High School, Coles, and Benton campus in recent time, an alarming increase in shootings in Prince William County at large, the environment within which all these schools operate. and I'll cover the layout of where the chief provides SROs in some detail. So what do we have in place to prevent this and to address this problem? He notes that we have a fairly good controlled entry system, but it stops once a person gets into the front office. And from there, they can go anywhere in the school, basically. Others, like Loudoun County, and some private schools have put together a more positive control system so that a person can't just get through the first door and wander around the high school or middle school or elementary school. Security in schools shouldn't stop when the bell rings at the end of the day, especially when you're having various events in the school, like the Monster Mash, for example, where you have 150 people milling around without any security whatsoever. So we want to basically have a holistic approach, and we don't think that hope is a plan. Now I'm addressing the points that John Hahn made. John Poster relies on several reports which are listed here, and I show the link to them. The Secret Service has done a lot of work on this area since after Columbine, and they address both the wider problem of shootings and armed attacks, but also especially the school shooter problem. A 5-year study on mass attack prevention, this is a broader problem of attacks in society, which are informative, is that you have to, if you apply the lessons learned from the Secret Service in terms of behavioral analysis and both physical and in terms of activities and so forth, that you can definitely start to make a huge difference in being able to detect, decide, engage, and mitigate a attacker. And this will reinforce this. These points that are made here were started to be made in the post-Columbine shooting, but there's a lot of similarity in that they built on over time. One of the things in this study that they identify is that many of these children have had what they call adverse childhood experiences, including substance abuse, parental incarceration, mental health issues on the part of the parents, etc. So that's kind of the more recent angle added to that list. John walked us through these steps. Basically, a couple points to make. One is it's not just a security thing, it's basically a multidisciplinary threat assessment team. And one of the good news stories is the Commonwealth of Virginia has a program for this, and resources to help school divisions. There's probably more attention need to be given to that. But so these are the things one would go through to make sure you had an effective program. These are some of the key implications that were identified. I will not walk through these, but leave them here for you to review. John was involved in helping the state of Florida. He was stationed down in Tampa, as I recall, with the Secret Service, and helped work on the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act. So a couple of things I just want to highlight about that. One is the Coach Aaron Fell's Guardian program. That is a program where you can recruit from former law enforcement officers, military, and others who have had experience in firearms, in various security matters, overseas, military, anybody that brings a general set of skills and an attitude to the problem and is willing to go through the training and serve as it won't be a police officer, but it would be a guardian, armed, trained, and equipped to do the job that the SROs would otherwise do, so that you don't have to compete or add a burden to very stretched law enforcement programs that are already undermanned. So some more parts of that program, I'm not going to belabor these. These are available. You can look those up. online easily. A couple things John mentioned. This is an analysis of just the larger number of attacks, not just school shootings, but you can see how they've changed over time. The months that they occur, that was interesting. The incidents by day and by hour of the day. So this is information I hadn't seen before and quite interesting. So let me turn to what I want to cover, which is the risk management results and recommendations. First, let's talk about why bother. Back in 2022, we noted that there was a lack of unified command and control of this. Both the police department had part of it and Prince William County Schools. That's always a problem. As a military person, you worry about those things. The prevention part of the equation seemed to be very limited, with one perhaps full-time person working the threat assessment thing based on information we were able to garner. There's 98 schools. There's 20 police officers, SROs, plus 5 supervisors. They cover 15 high schools full-time. They have limited about 3 officers that go from school to school in the middle school, and there's nobody covering elementary schools except a couple armed security personnel from the risk division of the school division. And that's like just as well have nothing. They have moderate access control and weak hardening in our estimation, and weak surveillance. And this is back in the summer of 2022. Why do probability risk management? Well, this is something that works. I've been doing it for years in support of the Coast Guard, in particular on their terrorism program. And it's commonly accepted. It's basically something that the government advocates, Department of Homeland Security does, and so forth. So it allows you to compare a range of scenarios against current capabilities or projected capabilities and estimate the consequences of attacks and the degree to which various solutions mitigate that. And you can easily, as we demonstrated, put this into return on investment by a rough cost estimate and using the model to estimate the degree to which the change can reduce casualties in this case. And then it's basically up to elected officials and the public to decide whether the risk is acceptable. And that's basically the bottom line, is the risk acceptable. So this is what recently Dr. McDade and her risk management division announced. They still have the full-time SROs in the high schools. They've got middle schools covered, unfortunately, still with part-time SROs, and elementary schools are going to hire 62 full-time unarmed security. And we'll show you why that's a challenge. This is the way we analyze the problem. We basically broke it down into a prevention problem and a response problem in terms of capabilities, and we assessed each of those independently, and then we combined them to come up with an overall result. This basically, I'm going to just walk you through this. We basically use this approach of first identifying what the current prevention program is and to what degree would they mitigate the 4 attacks. If that mitigation program failed, we assess the current response capability and the degree to which it would stop the attack. On the right, you can see basically a summary of the results of if you have no program. That means all you do is call 911. You would basically have the max loss, which is 28 deaths and equivalent injuries based on the Columbine attack. And then the current program we assessed, you would drop that down to 19, and if you employed what we call a reasonable best case, you could drop it down to 5. Some information about the shooters. This was based on a 2002 study. The 80% of the ones studied were experiencing a major stressor or crisis at the time of the attack. 70% experience a crisis for months or years. 38% experience 5 or more stressors. Often they're coping with losses, failures. They often get into suicide ideation. Many are bullied and persecuted. Drug use is common. Often they involve other students in some capacity. 80% of the guns come from family members, both close and extended. And many shooters leak their plans. This is an important attribute of the shooter community. In 2021, the Secret Service again points out that violence is preventable, and they're making a stronger pitch for this. They recommend intervening early. Students are often motivated by grievances with classmates, something to keep your eye open for. And students often know that something is amiss, and they must be able to report this, encouraged to report it, as, by the way, is the case with teachers and everybody in the school that's an adult. So they recommend strongly that a robust threat reporting, assessment, and mitigation be established. This basically, from the same study, shows how long it took to resolve the attack and by what means. Here we are. Non-law enforcement was the largest element or folks that stopped the attack. We're talking about teachers, administrators, and so forth. In 22% of the cases, this attacker stopped or left school. 13% suicide. Law enforcement intervention, 27%, and weapons fired, only 8%. That was information that I did not expect. 25% of the attacks are resolved within 5 minutes, 25 more within 15 minutes. So time is not your friend. And the time to respond after the attack starts is critical. If you don't have somebody with a gun to show up and divert the attention of the shooter, you'll have unacceptable levels of casualties. This is a display of the shooter's age. The median age, or the mode, is 15, the age where the most number of shooters lie. The average is 19.7. If you compare the age from left to right of these attacks and plot the number of persons killed or severely injured, you can see that the between 19 and 20, 21 is where the most violent and the most effective attackers reside. This data shows the attacks over time. You can see the dark green were people killed, and the green were the number of injuries. The big picture on this slide is the trend is not our friend here. There's a dip that I can't explain, that it started about 2007 to 2012, but overall the trend is not favorable. This is interesting data I think you'll find on discipline problems compared 2009 to 2019 based on surveys. These are the problems they track, and you'll note that in 3 cases they're going down: student bullying, sexual harassment, and sexual harassment based on sexual orientation or gender identity. All of those going down. But these are going up: student racial and ethnic tensions, student cyberbullying, student verbal abuse of teachers, and disrespect for teachers more than or other than verbal abuse. And what that basically points out to me is that we have a significant increase in teacher disrespect, abuse, and classroom disorder. And that's consistent with what I've heard from teachers that I've spoken with in Prince William and Fairfax counties. Just a quick summary of and focus on the elementary school problem here. Notice that the average age of the shooter in elementary schools is 30. That means that on a whole, the school system is not where the shooters are coming from. There may be former students, but these are people that are intent on killing as many innocent and helpless kids as they possibly can. The real evil among us. And unfortunately, because they're more mature and older, they are more effective at killing. So you can see the equivalent fatalities of elementary school kids is 61 and out of 40 incidents. So it's about 1.5% about a 50% higher rate of effective fatalities. Still, high schools have the most number of attacks and the most equivalent fatalities. So that's clearly where the greatest problem resides. These were the scenarios we used. I'm not going to belabor that. This is a few attributes of those scenarios that are relevant. 2 shooters in Columbine. Okay, so let's look at the risk analysis results. We did 4 scenarios, 3 types of schools, and 3 scenarios. That's just a snapshot of what the model looked like, and we'll provide this information to anybody that wants it that we trust. So we assumed this information in terms of the current capability. This was back in the summer into the fall of 2022. The basic key thing to point out is that we don't have full-time SROs in middle or elementary schools. The prevention model we used is this. We basically have a number of different places that can report and observe. We have an organization that's capable of gathering that information and also doing things like social media analysis. And then once a problem is identified, a problem student, they can start putting together a mitigation plan using appropriate resources from the school or the community. The object of the exercise is to be able to detect, decide to employ resources and then engage the student, and then engage the student with an appropriate set of resources, and then mitigate turn the student onto a healthy track. Our analysis indicates that in Prince William County and probably almost everywhere else, that the greatest return on investment that you can get if you want to improve your program is through improving the threat assessment part of the equation. So I'm not going to belabor this. I wanted to show you this slide that sort of illustrates how you would expect the deaths or the equivalent fatalities to occur over time in an attack. And this is the response model. We basically detect, decide, engage, and defeat. And the part of the equation that is the most difficult is engaging, getting someone with a weapon there who can neutralize the shooter. So having a shooter on call at a different location is not going to be able to prevent the numbers of casualties that you would want. This is just an example of the Columbine attack versus the current Prince William County Schools capability. You can see for high school, middle school, and elementary where the shortfalls are. If it's green, it's good. If it's red, it's bad. And as you can see, the prevention of risk in the current case is not impressive. When we add in response, you can see that we have again, look at the green and look at the red and the yellow, and you can see where the shortfalls are and in terms of the response side of the equation. And then if you look at both of those together, what the results are. So you can look at this analysis and it will tell you where you could improve. If you come up with a way to improve detection, that's a good thing for both prevention and for response. So that's basically the message here. If you do this kind of analysis, you can then zero in on the things that are weak and start coming up with programs and plans to mitigate those. This basically shows that the armed responder enhances both prevention and response. I'm not going to go into this except to summarize. If you have somebody there who's full-time watching out for kids and who has the capability and training to identify problem behaviors, problem indicators, and can start to bring together the threat assessment capability and respond effectively, you can prevent the attack. And then if you fail at that, which ultimately will happen, you have to be able to defeat the attack. So one SRO can do both of those things. Or armed responder. It doesn't have to be a police officer, by the way. As other jurisdictions have demonstrated, that such as Florida, you can definitely put together an effective program without relying totally on the police department. So here's some basically analysis. I'm going to show this to you because it shows the degree to which already the Prince William County Schools is moving along. Where you see check marks in a box, that means they've basically completed that fix. The zeros indicate nothing that we've identified that has mitigated or changed that. And over here, you have partial improvements with the blocks, the square blocks, in those areas. So that's good. You don't expect overnight fully resolving this problem, but it's encouraging that the school division is moving out in this area. Here's our conclusions and recommendations. First, prevention has the best return on investment, and I won't belabor that anymore, but I will say, if you can prevent a student from going down that path, you not only save lives at the end of that process, but you save the life of the shooter, the would-be shooter. You turn him away. If you can turn him away and turn him back into a productive citizen, you save the rates of incarceration, you save the impact of the horrific event, and you perhaps create a productive citizen. Improving detect, decide, and delay in the schools through the things we recommended would make a 911 call a more viable response. You have to think about that. You need to delay the shooter or in time to get the police there, or you lose. So we think, again, increase the threat assessment and mitigation capability significantly. Arm and train. If you're going to get 62 new security personnel, it'll cost you probably 25% more to arm them and train them and equip them. Create other armed staff solutions, i.e. the program in Florida, for example. So you're not competing with the police chief for resources. And then I believe we should advocate for a return on investment informed risk management approach. So now it's up to you. How would you answer these questions? And you can pause this and answer them yourself, and then I'll tell you what I think the answers are on the next slide. Would we have prevented it? Would we have stopped it? Can we figure out how to do this in a smart way? Would elected leaders and officials be satisfied with the current and projected plans? And how and what should our advocacy program be? So here's our offering of the answers to those questions. Would they have prevented the massacre? No, but we have an improved capability, we believe. Would the school and the police department be able to quickly stop the attack? Yes, but not in elementary schools, for sure. And I mean stop it in a timely manner so that you don't lose 28 people instead of a couple. Can we dissect our policies and capabilities to answer these questions? I think yes. We've demonstrated that we can do that. It's not rocket science, but only if Prince William County Schools and the police department participate and listens. Are elected leaders and citizens happy with the current plans? Well, you got to tell them what the situation is. So you got to inform them through something like this briefing. But once informed, are you happy with it? And what should our advocacy be? So that's really up to you for Moms for Liberty and citizens and parents. So we're available for questions and comments. You can contact us directly, or I left my contact information on the first slide. You can have that, and I will get to these guys. Here's some links. I'm just including some of the basic references we did in the initial study. And there you go.